Well, that's Deepak Parekh. We've also got Sanjay Baru and Shankar Iyer with us, journalists who've been looking at reforms for a good part of the last 2 decades. Mr. Baru, let me start by asking you, we just heard from Deepak Parekh there calling it a game changer, a transformational move, a big bang reform. But in the short term, what do you believe will be the key risks and how do you propose the government mitigate those?
Well, I think the biggest risk about any such move in India is what I call the vengeful operation of the Murphy's Law, which is if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. And I've often written that in India, Murphy's Law operates without a let. So you can already see in the last 3-4 days, mistakes have been made and there are corrections. So I think the government has to be far more agile on its feet in ensuring that there's movement of cash across the country, that more 100 rupee notes are available. This 2,000 rupee thing was a silly idea. I think they should have printed more 500 and 100 and, smaller notes. 50 rupees, for example. I saw some data which shows that a sharp decline in the printing of 50 rupee notes in the last 5-6 years. So I think these are the kind of day-to-day shifts which have to be dealt with. Only then can we talk about the big bang, the long-term benefits for the economy. But the short-term problems need to be first addressed.
Shankar Iyer, let me bring you in. Sanjay Baru, they're saying that the government ought to be far more agile. There have, of course, been questions on the need for this 2,000 rupee note. The government has presented an argument which doesn't really wash. But, in terms of the execution risk, I mean, you're pulling out 86% of the liquidity from this market. The fact of the matter is that things like recalibrating ATMs, now I would imagine that should have been, 101 as part of this execution plan, should it not?
Well, the story is really in the math of the demonetization. You pulled out $6.5 billion notes of 1,000 rupee denomination and about 8.25 billion notes of 500 rupee denomination. That roughly is the story of what has been sucked out, and which is essentially 8 out of 10 currency notes in circulation with the public. Now, do we know when they pulled out these number of notes, which is totaling to over 14 lakh crores, what is the replacement that was envisaged and which is in place? Now, it is arguable that they will not replace as many high-value notes as there were in the system. So how many low-value notes were planned to be replaced? Now, you spoke about ATM recalibration. The 100 rupee notes, the 50 rupee notes, the 20 rupee notes, I don't think that they needed recalibration. You already had those. Was it too difficult to imagine that you would need more 100 rupee notes when you have pulled out 500 rupee notes? No. Is it too difficult to imagine that you would need more change when people come to replace the 1,000 rupee notes? No. I do not know whether there was a thought-out plan, scenario mapping in a country which has over 45 to 50% of the economy is informal. There is also the timing of the thing which should have alerted the government that this is sowing operation time for one major crop in the north of India. And that crop is valuable not only in terms of what the output is, but also in terms of the value of that output. So what was the government's plan? We don't know. We don't know how many 100 rupee notes are going to flow back into the system. So the story of who is at fault is something that can wait for another day.
Absolutely.
The question that comes up is who is fixing the problem? Now, I do not know which genius thought out of the idea of indelible ink and stuff like that. Now, for instance, average input cost of a hectare of land in Uttar Pradesh to sow again would be probably 25,000 or 30,000 just in terms of the seats. Now, what is that guy who's got the indelible ink on his right finger? That is assuming that there is bank facility there, assuming the bank has the currency notes, assuming that the ATM machine there works. So what we are looking at essentially is the distance between a great intent, a bold and courageous move, and what can go wrong in India will always go wrong.
Yes, that is what Mr. Baru talked about. But Mr. Baru, moving away from the Murphy's Law, and I want to pick up on the point that Shankar Iyer made, because it's very clear there is no looking back at this point in time. Let's talk about solutions. Let's talk about fixing the problem that we're currently faced with. What would the top priority be?
Priority is to get people to, get cash into hands of people who need them, get them to start spending, because really the negative impact, the wealth effect, as the economists call it, of suddenly losing access to cash would be quite severe on the economy, and there would be a negative growth this quarter, probably into the next quarter. So reviving sentiment, reviving confidence in the system, these are all important things. You need a sustained intervention by, macroeconomic authorities, the economists. I've not heard, I don't know, I don't follow television, I don't see much of media, but I don't know if the chief economic advisor has been out in the media talking about plans for the future.
No, he hasn't.
No, he hasn't. Yeah, exactly. I have not heard the governor of the Reserve Bank addressing a press conference. These are institutional authorities. They need to be out there injecting confidence in people.
Well, the Economic Affairs Secretary has been trying to do that, but that's been more in terms of giving us an update on what the situation on the ground is and what is happening when it comes to replenishment of the currency that's been sucked out. But Shankar Iyer, before I toss it across to Bhupen, who's got Anand Sharma with him, in terms of the fiscal benefits, because there's a lot of argument around what this will mean now as far as the Reserve Bank's kitty is concerned, what it will mean in terms of infusing liquidity into banks. As I pointed out at the start of the show, we've got two cautionary statements coming in from two former Reserve Bank governors cautioning that this money or this liquidity should not necessarily be used to infuse banks and sort of talk about recapitalization that way. Fiscal benefits and this business of what happens to, the Reserve Bank at this point in time with the kitty.
Well, I'm not going to presume that I know better than Dr. Subbarao and Dr. Rangarajan, who have run the Reserve Bank of India in two critical phases of India's economy, post-reforms and post the financial crisis of 2008. So they know their marbles and they know how to count marbles. The simple point is that the Reserve Bank of India prints currency for the government of India. So it carries assets that are liabilities for the government. How will the government treat the shrinking of liability is a question that I don't think has been answered clearly enough. The point really is, why should the government look at, what is the argument that is preceding and following this rather curious map that is being put out? It is simply like a company declaring a one-time other income, extraordinary income. That is not really the should be the focus of the government. The focus of the government should be that you pulled out so much of black money, which could be somewhere in the region of 2 lakh crores,
Shankar,
going by the 1978.
And
what is the benefit?
I'm afraid I am going to have to interrupt you, but thank you very much for sharing what you see as the curious math in all of this. Sanjay Baru, Shankar Iyer, Mr. Bhattacharya, thanks very much for joining us. Let me go across now to Bhupen. He's got